In today's video, we have a significant update on the Jack Eichel trade situation. We also have updates regarding potential trades or signings regarding John Klingberg and the Vitali Kravtsov situation with the New York Rangers. We have some more waivers news, some big news from the American Hockey League as well I want to touch on. And we do have an update on what happened with Jimmy Hayes as he tragically passed away not long ago. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Like I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. Before we get into a lot of the NHL stuff, we do have a couple of, I guess you could almost call them non-NHL stories in a sense, but one good, one not so good. We'll start with the good news. As I mentioned, we have some big news from the American Hockey League. We had the very first ever female referee. Katie Gay makes the jump here to be the first American Hockey League female ref. It's a huge accomplishment. There are more female officials in the American Hockey League this year. But of course, we saw as well not long ago the first female official in the Ontario Hockey League for the juniors. So it's just nice to see a little bit more diversity. It's nice to see more women being included and given more opportunities at the higher levels, as many of them certainly are deserving. It's just nice to see that progression within the sport, and it's certainly a big story that I hope we see continue, and hopefully get more females involved at the highest level, because they deserve every opportunity. Now, as I mentioned as well, shortly before recording this video, I came across a story from the Hayes family on the tragic passing of Jimmy Hayes. There's an article in the Boston Globe. I'll put that in a pinned comment down below in case you want to read the information. Of course, we know Jimmy, at the young age of 31, tragically passed away not that long ago. Many of us questioning what happened. He's young. He's an athlete. He seems healthy. What could have possibly happened? Of course, when you're talking about human life, there's always things that can go wrong within our bodies that we can't predict, and things do happen, that you just, there's not much explanation for sometimes. However, I do got to give props and to the Hayes family for being courageous to share the story as to what happened. They finally actually just got this news when they were on their way to the Jimmy Hayes tribute, which happened a few days ago at an NHL hockey game, and as they were on their way, they got the information. The toxicology report came back to the family. So essentially what happened, Jimmy Hayes did have fentanyl and cocaine in his system, which they believe led to his tragic early death. Now, of course, many people within that were close to him were extremely shocked, surprised. I know his wife seemed to be in that category. His dad and his brother Kevin, not as much, according to the article. His dad, of course, goes on to talk about the fact that he understands addiction. He knows what things are like. He's battled some stuff himself in the past. I know Kevin, and apparently it sounds like some people did know that he obviously had an issue with pain pills in the past, which many people, I guess, closer to him did have a knowledge of, that he had battled an injury in the NHL, got addicted to pain pills because of it, and had a really, really hard time kicking it. Apparently, I think he did seek some help recently. I'm not sure exactly how recent this was, but it didn't work. And unfortunately, he got tangled up with this stuff, and this stuff is not good. This cocaine, fentanyl can be killer, and unfortunately ended his life early. So I know we've heard a lot about Robin Leonard talking about a lot of this stuff in the NHL, and talking about pain pills and how some of these medications are given out a little bit too liberally and too freely. He said there was occasions of not having a prescription. I mean, obviously, I know all that stuff's being talked about now behind the scenes, but this is a classic case of what Robin Leonard is trying to help prevent happen in the future. This is a young man with, looking from the outside looking in, looked like he had it all. He is a Boston kid that grew up, won a national championship at a local Boston, college, ended up making to the NHL, played for the local Bruins, had a beautiful wife, young kids, nice big house, made good money. Like, you know what I mean? From the outside looking in, you'd think this guy has it all. And it's not like he turned to drugs because he thought it was just a cool thing to do. He ended up on it because of injuries and got hooked, and then addiction takes over, and it can rear its ugly head, and it can certainly have a major negative impact, and the ultimate negative impact like this as well. So I hope y'all take a minute, read that story. If it helps anybody out there, seek help. If you need it, then I certainly encourage you to do so, because it can be a major life-altering ending to a different story that you'd probably rather write a different way if you can help it. Like I said, I'm proud of the Hayes family for having the courage to speak out and acknowledge what happened here, because I'm sure it's not easy to share that kind of news that their famous young popular son at 31 years old died due to drugs when nobody, at least very few people, or publicly at least, had any clue that he was even battling anything like that. So anyways, I thought that the story was worth noting here, so that most of you, in case you didn't see the news, could finally have an idea what actually happened to young Jimmy Hayes. Now, on to some other news. We do have NHL waivers news. We had Derek Grant and Greg Pattern, both from the Anaheim Ducks, on waivers yesterday. Both players have cleared. I thought there might be a chance we see a claim, but that's not the case. Both clear, both can be assigned to the minors, and there are no new players on waivers here today. We also seen former NHL defenseman Mikko Lehtonen, of course, who joined the NHL last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs, got traded to Columbus, and we recently saw at the beginning of this year at the end of training camp, he didn't get the roster spot with Columbus. They wanted to put him through the minors, and he basically refused assignment and wanted to terminate the contract, which they did, and he now goes back to the KHL where he used to play. Different team this time, though. I believe it was SKA St. Petersburg, I believe is where he signed. But he signed a 4-year deal with the KHL, so fair to say that Lehtonen won't be making an attempt at the NHL probably ever again, at the very least not for a very long time. That's going to take him into his 30s, though, so pretty unlikely that he ever gives that another chance or even is given another opportunity if he wanted to either. Now, the other pieces of information here all come from the new 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday night. Of course, last season and for a while they've had what they used to call Saturday Headlines with Chris Johnston and Elliotte Friedman. Of course, Chris Johnston no longer works for Sportsnet. He's now on to his own podcast and obviously does work with TSN as well. So they now have Elliotte Friedman and Jeff Merrick, the popular brand that they have with obviously Elliott's 32 Thoughts blog. And then, of course, they had the 32 Thoughts podcast that Merrick does with Friedman. And now they had the 32 Thoughts video portion of that on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday nights, which I thought was a cool segment. Rogers Sportsnet has a brand new set. It looks really nice. And they were talking about, obviously, some of these three players we're going to talk about here now. Starting with Vitali Kravtsov, who, obviously, as we know, requested a trade of the Rangers organization because he didn't make the cut out of training camp. At this point, he had basically refused assignment because believed the team was going to suspend him. I've even seen rumors, and I'm trying to verify that it's true, but some people are saying that he's gone back to Russia and he was spotted at a hockey game over there. I'm trying to see if there's any other sources that can confirm that, but that was reported on Twitter. But either way, at this point, the Rangers apparently had reached out to see if maybe he would consider trying to work his way back into the lineup. Not long after this happened, we saw an injury to Kaapo Kakko. Even though it's not something he's expected to be kept out too long term for, it's still a situation where they could be short a body, and Kravtsov is, even though we didn't get a roster spot right off the hop here, could be in a spot where he could get one of the first call-up options. And I'm not sure that that's really something that they're going to be accepting based on the reaction here that from the Kravtsov camp. So it looks as though they're still likely going to be seeking a trade, but the Rangers are trying to see if there's any way they can repair the relationship and see if he'd be interested in making a return. But it doesn't look that way so far, and really the Rangers can take their good old time with this. They'll wait and get the deal they want before they move him along. There was early word it could be a second-round pick. I've seen other sources saying they might want more of a top 6 or top 9 roster player. So I'm not sure exactly which route they're going to go to for what the asking price is going to be. But needless to say, they're not in any hurry. If he's not a player that's immediately on their roster, they weren't planning on having there right away, then they're not really losing anything. If they get the right deal, they'll make the deal. But Kravtsov could drag on for a while. Could happen quickly. This really boils down to what kind of offers they get on this former high draft pick. Now, before we go any further into the video, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Moving on to some other notes here from the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada. They also discussed defenseman John Klingberg, who we've talked about on a couple of occasions. And we now have reports to suggest that Klingberg's looking for an 8-year deal in the Dallas organization around the mid-$60 million range. So anywhere from $62 to $66 million according to Jeff Merrick. That's a lot of money. And it's not that the Stars are not interested. They certainly are. There's mutual interest, as we've said before, to keep Klingberg in Dallas, but you have to think what Klingberg is looking for might be a little bit too much money for Dallas to consider. Now, Merrick goes on to talk about the fact that when you analyze the Stars' moves this past offseason, the fact that they obviously locked up Miro Heiskanen, their top young defenseman, for an extended time. They also brought in some other defensemen like Hakanpää, like Ryan Suter, that maybe they're planning for potentially losing Klingberg. They know this is maybe not a possibility to keep him as much as they have interest, that it might prove just to be too much money, too expensive. I mean, that's going to put him with a cap hit of over $8 million a season. And when you look around the roster and their cap space, it just might not prove to be feasible. But at this point, there's no real rumors of a trade, but you have to think with the Dallas Stars playing in a very tough Central Division, if we get further along into the year and it's looking like they may not be a playoff team, and if the contract negotiations are not really going all that favorably, and right now they're not, that a real possibility does exist here for a trade. I think he would be a tremendous asset at the trade deadline for a lot of teams going into the deadline before they go into the playoffs. Klingberg, you know what? Maybe they figure out a way to keep him. I don't know, but it's certainly not looking promising based on what he's looking for. And at this point, I think it's fair to say he's actually earned that kind of contract. And with the way the D have been getting paid this past offseason, it certainly has driven up everybody's value here a little bit. And he's looking to cash in, which only makes sense. We'll have to be watching this situation as it unfolds. Probably going to be a while before we really know how things are going to move forward here. Now, the other biggest news was a pretty significant update on Jack Eichel from Elliotte Friedman, talking about a couple of things. One, that the Buffalo Sabres at this point are refusing to retain salary on any potential Eichel trade. Now, there was a report back earlier in the offseason, I couldn't tell you when it was because we've had so many Eichel discussions, that the Sabres would consider this, which was certainly making it more feasible for teams to pull off a trade. But now they're saying no, they don't want to retain salary. They will entertain taking back some contracts. But I guess the benefit there is that they probably would be willing to take back contracts that have less term than Eichel, which obviously, doesn't tie up their cap as long, and also at the same time doesn't make it probably be quite as much money that they'd be on the hook for. So that's certainly going to be a game changer with so many teams being tied up against the cap. Obviously, having Eichel's full contract to be going on to somebody else's cap is not going to be easy to do, which we've talked about before. But if they'll take back some contracts, that is, still a possibility. But at the same time here, the big news to me that was the most surprising that we hadn't really heard before was the Avalanche being involved. Colorado, according to Elliotte Friedman, he believes they've made an inquiry and were serious about making an Eichel trade. But part of that had to be that they had salary retention on Buffalo's side. Since Buffalo wouldn't entertain that, they didn't get too far in negotiations. But still, the fact that the Avalanche is powerhouse of a team as they are in somebody that we haven't really heard much about being involved in these trade talks, have emerged as somebody who at least had conversations and had some serious, interest. What if things change? And just because the word is that they didn't go too far doesn't mean they won't try again. And it doesn't mean that they won't, try to, sweep back in there if the situation changes on what the asking price is going to be. But can you imagine the Avalanche with Jack Eichel? Now, Jeff Merrick's reported before, as I mentioned on his new syndicated show, as well as talking about here again on 32 Thoughts, that the Vegas Golden Knights were probably the team they feel has got the furthest along in contract talks. And of course, right now with Vegas being battered by injuries at both the NHL and AHL level, you have to wonder if maybe they'll go looking for a trade sooner than later. Now, some think that because so many people are injured, it might be too difficult to pull it off. But at the same time, you got to remember at some point, none of these injuries are too serious, and all these players will be back this year. So maybe it's something that Eichel could go on long-term injury reserve to start anyways, and they would have time to figure things out. But ultimately, the Buffalo Sabres, it's been confirmed now through this segment that Peyton Krebs and Nick Hague were the two main young pieces that Buffalo wants back from Vegas if they're going to entertain a Jack Eichel trade. And as of the last discussions, of course, they were very much reluctant on Krebs. They didn't really say that they wouldn't include Hague. They probably would prefer not to, but when you're getting a player of Eichel's value, you have to be prepared to be, putting in something of value as well. And of course, we had heard rumors before that they would try to create some salary space by moving the last year of Riley Smith's contract, that he could possibly be on the move as probably in a separate deal as a cost-cutting measure to add Eichel. But Hague and Krebs would certainly be the most interesting younger pieces for Buffalo to consider from Vegas. As we talked about before, they've traded many of their young draft picks and young interesting players to get guys that can help right away with their pursuit to try to win a Stanley Cup early in the franchise's existence. So they're not exactly deep when it comes to that. I mean, they'd have their upcoming first round pick, and you get Krebs and Hague, and you're probably looking at a roster player or two to come off to make some money work, and that's probably what the deal would have to be. Vegas has any chance of getting this deal done with Buffalo, but like many have said, the Golden Knights have probably gotten the furthest along, but unless they want to budge on Peyton Krebs, it's likely not going to happen. That seems to be, in my opinion, the fair thing to include if Buffalo is going to get a deal done here with Vegas. But we'll see. They've traded every other top young player. What leads us to think they wouldn't do it this time? Let me know your thoughts on the Eichel situation with the Avalanche and Vegas and everything else discussed here today. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. I'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.